live. Hi, friends. Hi, friends. I hope you're well. Chicago weather. Today we have the weather that we're famous for, which is freezing rain. Yes, freezing rain. It happens any number of days in any given year, and it is every bit as unpleasant as it sounds. I woke up early today. I'm like, I'm going to go for a walk. And I looked out the window and went, no, I'm not. So, besides the weather, I'm great. Today we're going to talk about the thing that is to singers what fire was to the scarecrow. Vocal damage. Oh, I do have my title up. Good. Or vocal trauma. Both of these things change our voices and thus our sense of self. They alter our experience of our lives and sometimes other people's experience of us. Both demand attention, healing, and rehabilitation. The prospect of vocal damage or trauma can be so scary that some singers' relationship with their voices is based on the fear of it. As you know, I know you know that. There are a few very common reasons that people get vocal damage. And not all of them are about singing, which I know you also know. Some are about things we do all the time. Some might even be about things that you do. And all of the things I'm going to touch on today are preventable. Not everything with voice damage is preventable, but everything we talk about today is. So, like most things, awareness is big deal. As voice professionals, we have to have an awareness of the common behaviors, of the things we hear in our students, and of healing and nurturing habits that we can encourage to increase vocal health. And, of course, help our students so that they can make choices that nurture their vocal health without being afraid. Right? We really don't need that. We do not need any fear in our lives, any more fear. Some of you may have suffered from vocal trauma or damage in the past. I have. Part of my story as a singer was going on the road with a touring rock band right out of college, right after my 8 years of classical voice training. And now I realize that there are people who would have been able to do that and just not missed a beat. I just was not one of them. I was not one of those people. I trashed my voice. So if you've ever suffered from a hurting or a misbehaving voice, I feel ya. I gotcha. So here we go. And there we go. You know, there can be stigma and shame around having vocal damage. People sometimes feel guilty or embarrassed when they experience vocal damage. In fact, I think it's fair to say that people often feel embarrassed or shamed about that. Sometimes people will feel really angry. They will feel that they have been led astray by people they trusted. It's a huge deal. Personally, professionally, emotionally. It's an emotionally huge deal. But if you know me, you know there's not going to be any kind of blaming or shaming going on here. Neither you nor your students did anything wrong. We're going to talk about how people typically get vocal damage, how to raise awareness around that, and how to nurture yourself or help your students nurture themselves with behaviors that will inspire confidence rather than fear. So, wait. Oh, there's my trigger. There we go. So my freebie today is an excerpt from my book that is basically what I'm going to talk about today. So you don't need to take notes. You can just put voice in the comments and the neurovocal bot will send you that link. And you won't have to remember anything. You'll just have it in a nice little PDF format. Plain old freebie, you guys, no strings attached. But if you are not on my mailing list, I would like to encourage you to sign up, because then just terrific stuff will just magically show up in your inbox. Like, in fact, on Saturday, it was my birthday, and I celebrated my birthday by giving away stuff. So people who are on my mail list just got free stuff in their mailbox on Saturday. So if you want to be my pen pal, head on over to my site and sign thee up. Now, I have to introduce myself. I'm Meredith Colby, and I help voice teachers create confident teaching and singing of contemporary styles. I am the author of Money Notes, which introduces neurovocal method, a way to create healthy singing for microphone music that is based on brain science. Microphone music, all music that is sung into microphones. You can find me right here on Facebook every Monday or on the replay. You can also find me scattered around cyberspace, blogs, podcasts, what have you, and of course, my website, meredithcolby.com, where there is other stuff. I love showing up here for you guys on Mondays. I do. I look forward to it. I plan for it. I put on a pretty face for it. And I hope you will help me out by being generous with the likes and the hearts and the comments. Facebook likes me more when you guys interact with me. Any kind of way. A like, a heart, a thumbs up, a whatever. And I really appreciate it. I do. I notice it. Now, let's get to it. I'm broadcasting it. Let's talk about 4 common causes of vocal damage and trauma and how to love yourself and your students out of those behaviors. Out of them. Okay. This is a thing that happens, you guys. We all do it. We shouldn't. We know we shouldn't, but we do it. Different people have different levels of vocal tolerance and vocal resilience. Some people have really strong voices. I'm just going to bring the title back up here. Some people have very strong voices that will put up with all kinds of everything. You've probably heard me talk about my husband, who is a rock baritone. He has this big, hairy voice. He does not take care of it. He does not warm up. He has never had a lesson. He is 69 years old, and he still sounds amazing. I mean, he is a great singer. I do not use the word great lightly. And he just has one of those voices, just really strong, really resilient, great, right? But that was just luck. He just rolled the dice and won. Most people's voices are not that strong. Some people's voices are very sensitive to every little thing. So that's a thing we need to be aware of, that there is this really broad continuum of tolerance and resilience with people's voices. So that I just want to put that out there, because sometimes we act like it is not that way, and it is. Also, as long as we're on the subject, I just have to put this in. This was not in my notes, but I'm going to say it anyway. Hairy voices, that's what I call them, husky voices, raspy voices, are not necessarily damaged voices, you guys. Some people just have husky voices, healthy and husky simultaneously. So when you hear a husky voice, don't always go to, oh, good heavens, it's damaged. It's also true that husky voices, while they may not be ideal for classical, they are fabulous for pretty much any other kind of music. They are intrinsically interesting, and we love them. I love them. So anyway, Damage can come from singing, but often does not. In my case, when I had vocal damage, it came from singing. It came from not having the right tool for the job. So I was singing with all these compensatory behaviors, which clearly were not a good choice. But not that I had any other choice at the time, but they just weren't healthy for me. But a lot of times, these things come from speaking habits that can show up. And then the damage shows up in your singing. I'm sorry, I have an itchy nose today. Okay, so voice users, the other thing to remember, and this kind of addresses the shame and guilt issue, is that people who use their voices a lot are sensitive to how their voice is behaving. So they may be aware of vocal damage or of some level of trauma that a normal person would not be aware of, or a non-professional voice user would not necessarily be aware of. Additionally, people who use their voices a lot are going to be more susceptible to damage in the same way that a major league pitcher is more likely to get a shoulder problem, or a carpenter is more likely to get a back problem. That stuff just kind of happens. So I'm going to talk about the 4 common troublemakers. The 4 common troublemakers. And these are the... Okay, I shouldn't say, I am not a speech pathologist. So I don't know if these are the most common things. But as a voice teacher, these have been the most common things that I have seen. So if you have something that's a very common thing that you have seen a lot, please share with the group. Share it with the group. Okay, number 1, using a bigger hammer. So you know that expression, if it doesn't fit, use a bigger hammer. So, and we've all had this student, thank you, whoever gave me the thumbs up. We have all had this student, the person who, okay, I'm going to use the most typical one. They're almost always people who favor their chest registers. They identify with their chest register. The chest register feels like their real voice. And their head voice feels like somebody else's voice to them. They don't like it, so they don't use it, so they don't like it, so they don't use it. You know, it's that thing. And so they just use a bigger hammer. When they get up to the top of their range, they just try to muscle it up there. That's the singing version. And then the voice, there is the speaking version of the same kind of thing, right? Elementary school teachers get vocal damage because of this. They have an idea of what their voices are. If they talk to a speech pathologist, that person, or a voice teacher, that person might say to them, you know, if you raise your pitch when you are yelling at your classroom, they would hear you better and it would be easier on your voice. But since the classroom teacher maybe hasn't had that experience, they will keep their pitch at the same level, which is the level they identify with as their identity, and they will just be louder. So that's another version of the bigger hammer. So it's not just elementary school teachers, but they're a really obvious example. So using a bigger hammer is one. And we see that all the time, and of course you deal with that in your studio. But it is a speaking thing as well. Number 2, ignoring the signs. So this would have been the category that I would have fallen into when I had my vocal damage. The ignoring the signs. Our voices start misbehaving. They don't feel the same. They don't sound the same. They do stuff that they weren't doing before. We are hoarse in the morning and our voices don't clear up until much later in the day. We have a persistent feeling of gunk in the back of our throat that we can't swallow down. We are singing and all of a sudden our voice just drops out for a second and then comes back. Those are some really obvious everyday kind of things that can happen. So we notice that happening and we choose not to deal with it for whatever reason. Whatever got you to that place where that is happening probably is not going to go away because it's either like a habit that you have or maybe a change in your physiology. I didn't used to have acid reflux, but now I do. So it could be something like that. At any rate, ignoring the signs is not a good thing. If you have something like that and then you go, and when I say you know I'm talking your students, the whole big picture, right? You go to the ENT, you go to the laryngologist, and they say, oh, you're fine. If you know you're not fine, please go to another one. It's really worth it. It's worth following up on that. Number 3, trauma. Trauma typically can come from a single event, like a particularly bad gig where the band is particularly loud and you particularly cannot hear yourself. Screaming at a basketball game, you have no idea how loud you were screaming and you did it for a really long time. If you know that has happened and you are a smart voice user, you can take a couple days of vocal rest, baby your voice, overhydrate, put warmth on it, all the good stuff. If you pretend it hasn't happened and you just carry on, you just sally forth as per usual, then you might be inviting some vocal damage. So this is a thing that your students really need to know about, by the way, P.S. And the 4th thing is the one that's that speech pathologists who deal with singers deal with all the time. And I know this because I am friends with some speech pathologists, and they will say to a singer, on a scale of 1 to 10, how talkative would you say you are? And singers are always like 7, 8, 9, 10. We tend to be the more gregarious type of personality. So we tend to talk too much. Your voice can just get tired. When it is tired, it is susceptible to damage. If that happens day after day after day after day, I don't need to finish that sentence, do I? Particularly, and getting back to what I said before, some voices are more resilient and stronger, and it wouldn't matter. They can talk all day, every day, and they might lose friends, but they won't lose their voice. Some people who are the more gregarious, outgoing people have a voice that isn't as resilient or isn't as strong. That person needs to schedule in an hour, 2 hours, whatever, of vocal rest every day. It's just a thing. And it's okay. It's an okay thing. It might be good for them at other levels besides just their voices. Who knows? And this is a thing that I just want to bring up because you guys know I'm singing the microphone gal. And my professional life was as a band singer, and a lot of my clients over the years have been band singers. And here's the thing about bands. Bands tend to have a culture that is very kind of boys club, that is no whining, no complaining allowed. And singers very often will buy into that. And it is not necessarily the best thing for them. So the reason I say that to you is because I want you to be aware that if you have singers who are singing in bands, that's more than likely that is the culture of the band. Not absolutely. Some bands are populated by enlightened, awesome, wonderful people who just can't wait to do the best thing for their singer. Yes, those bands exist, but they are the minority. Most bands are like, just tough it out, carry your own stuff, stop complaining, whatever. So the reason I'm saying this is because if you have singers who are in bands, I want you to talk to them about this. I want you to put it out on the table so they are very aware of it, so they are less likely to put up with it, and help them craft the words that they can use to advocate for themselves. It really is worth it. Let them practice on you. Help them find a way that they can advocate for themselves in the culture of the band that is okay. Because the guitar player can always buy another guitar, right? So I know, I don't need to tell you guys that. Anyway, oh good. Oh, Rita's here. Rita says, this is so true. I wish I was aware of it when I started out all those years ago. I never complained, but I wanted to be one of the boys. Yeah, me too. Me too, Rita. I so feel you on that. I mean, that's why I started this whole voice teacher journey with horrible vocal damage, because I didn't want to complain, because I was the only woman in the band, because my instrument was the only one made of flesh and blood. So yeah, I wish I had known too. So I would really encourage any teacher who has a singer who's in a band, don't wait for them to bring it up. You bring it up and talk to them about it and help them find a way to advocate for themselves. It's really important. Practice the words with them. Anyway, so I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I am Meredith Colby, author, teacher, speaker, lover of cats and whales, mother, and goofy person. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm here every week at the same time. I hope you'll join me again. Bye.